Introduction: the event horizon. Observe the crowd wandering through the streets of this dying world. If you sharpen your perception and look at them through the implacable lens of metaphysics and quantum mechanics, you will discover a clinical and terrifying truth. The vast majority of human beings do not truly exist on the material plane. They are thermodynamic specters. They are empty bodies whose vital energy is chronically evaporated. Their feet are planted in today, but their minds are fractured, bleeding constantly through the fine fabric of space-time. Half of their consciousness is trapped in the prison of a past that is already dust, devoured by nostalgia, lamentation, and resentment. The other half is frantically projected toward an illusory future, consumed by the anxiety of catastrophes that, in their vast majority, will never manifest. By living in this perpetual state of dispersion, by refusing to collapse their own probability wave in the exact and sacred millisecond of the present, the ordinary individual loses mass. And the unshakable laws of the physics of the universe dictate that that which lacks mass lacks gravity. That is why they are so tragically weak. That is why any external perturbation, a family crisis, an unexpected economic loss, a sharp word, or the simple and natural passage of years, drags them and shatters them like dry leaves in a hurricane. By not inhabiting their own core, they lack the centripetal force necessary to sustain the columns of their own inner empire. In the deepest and darkest astrophysics, there exists a theoretical limit around collapsed stars known as the event horizon. It is the ultimate frontier, the exact point of no return. It is the mathematical threshold. It is where matter has condensed with such ferocity, where gravity has become so immense, colossal, and absolute that the curvature of space-time closes in on itself. Beyond that line drawn in the void, nothing can escape. Neither external noise, nor surrounding matter, nor even particles of light. All is dragged toward the singularity. All is pulled toward the center in a destructive, silent, and perfect embrace. This work is a formal, cold, and ruthless invitation to cross that quantum threshold. The Vortex of Presence is not a treatise of cheap spiritual comfort. It is a manual of gravitational engineering for the soul. It is a process of deep internal compaction. Through these pages, you will learn to stop radiating your valuable energy toward the periphery of fear and hope. You will learn to exert a contractive force so pure that it will turn you into conscious matter, a superior organism that does not react to the universe, but rather absorbs it and subdues it. You are becoming the center. Prepare to stop the clock. You are about to abandon the undignified lightness of dispersed minds to assume the crushing and divine weight of stillness. By crossing this event horizon, you will cease to be a victim of circumstances to become the vortex of your own destiny. You will witness the absolute end of all external turbulence. The external chaos will be sucked in, crushed, and silenced forever by the unnegotiable density of your absolute presence. Welcome to the center of immobility. The light cannot escape your gravity now. You are the source. You are the mass. You are the final and only authority of your existence. Chapter 1. The energy leak, the theft of space-time. The dispersion, the quantum noise. To understand the misery in which the ordinary human mind dwells, we must resort to the most implacable of the laws of thermodynamics, entropy. The universe tends naturally toward disorder, the scattering of energy, and the cooling of systems. If you do not contain heat within a furnace with thick hermetic walls, the thermal energy will escape. The fire will die irredeemably, leaving behind a handful of grey ashes. In the mechanics of the human spirit, this law manifests with clinical precision. The vast majority of people, the biomass running terrified through streets, suffer from chronic thermodynamic hemorrhage. Their vital energy is not contained. It is leaking second by second. We shall call this state of existential evaporation, this invisible bleeding that weakens the human being into a weightless hologram, the dispersion or quantum noise. Observe the consciousness of an individual sick with anxiety. The man wakes up. Physically, his body is under the sheets breathing today's oxygen, yet his mind is not there. In the fraction of a millisecond, his consciousness has abandoned its physical vessel and traveled at the speed of light toward a future that does not exist. His mind projects toward 3 in the afternoon, suffering for a meeting that has not happened. Then it jumps to next week, agonizing over a bill that must be paid. Modern society has disguised this psychiatric and physical pathology with honorable titles like being cautious or responsible. But in the high physics of the monarchs, this is called the theft of space-time. When you allow your mind to displace toward tomorrow to solve uncrystallized problems, you commit a biological error. The central nervous system does not distinguish between a real threat and an imaginary one projected on the screen of the mind. By compulsively thinking about future misfortune, your brain orders the release of cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart accelerates. You are forcing your body to fight a brutal war against ghosts. It is an asymmetrical combat where you will always lose because you cannot hit a ghost, but the ghost can kill you through cardiac exhaustion. This is the quantum noise, a deafening mental static of multiple catastrophic possibilities vibrating simultaneously in your head without any of them collapsing into reality. The mathematical result is the absolute loss of mass. The man whose energy is fragmented, trapped in past resentment or paralyzed by future terror, disposes of exactly 0% energy to inhabit the current millisecond. He becomes a 3-dimensional ghost. He lacks density. He lacks the gravity necessary for respect. When the anxious individual sits to eat, he does not taste the food. When his children speak, he does not hear their voices. His gravitational force is null. Consequently, he lacks authority. People perceive this lack of mass. No one respects a man whose gaze is lost in the void of tomorrow. No one submits to that instability. Chronic anxiety is the physical confession that the universe has defeated you before the battle began. You have been robbed. Fear has looted your only real possession, the present time. It convinced you that the only way to protect yourself from chaos is to think about it incessantly. But physics dictates otherwise. Energy cannot be used in 2 distinct space-time coordinates at once. If your energy is in the future trying to control the uncontrollable, your castle in the present has been left without guards, ready to be invaded by insignificance. It is time to stop the hemorrhage. It is time to close the valves of fear. The collapse, the centripetal force. To reverse the thermodynamic catastrophe of dispersion, passive meditations and lukewarm mantras are useless. To stop an energy leak at the quantum level requires the application of relentless mechanical violence. You must execute a physical law that counteracts the mind's impulse to escape. This is the collapse. In classical mechanics, centrifugal force pushes matter outward, away from the center. That is your anxious mind flying toward tomorrow. On the contrary, centripetal force is the titanic magnitude that forces a body in motion to curve its trajectory, pulling it violently and unnegotiably toward the exact center of the axis. You must become the generator of your own centripetal force. You must execute an act of mental tyranny over your own wandering thoughts. The technique of this collapse is a surgery of space-time amputation. It consists of the aggressive surveillance of your own attention and the application of the guillotine of time. Visualize the dynamic. You are sitting in your study. Suddenly the habit of the disease activates. Your mind tries to escape. A thought whispers, "What if the medical results next week are bad? How will I pay that debt?" The mental tissue tries to expand, stealing the energy of the current instant. In that exact millisecond, you must let the blade fall. You must interrupt the chain of thought with a dry, dictatorial physical order. The word in your mind must be the impact of a block of lead falling on asphalt. You shall order retraction. Instantly, apply the centripetal force to return to your coordinates. Ask yourself with lethal coldness, where are my feet in this millisecond? My feet are touching the wood of this floor. My back is feeling the chair. Oxygen is filling my lungs. The coffee cup is hot in my hand. It is Tuesday. It is 10 in the morning. Nothing else exists. This is the truth of matter. The future is a mathematical abstraction without physical mass. The past is a dead memory. By forcing your attention so sadically upon tactile reality, you are causing the collapse of the wave function. In quantum mechanics, a particle exists in multiple probabilities until the exact moment it is observed. At the instant of direct observation, the wave collapses. The infinite possibilities disappear and matter is fixed in a single unmovable reality. By observing the present with the lethal edge of your attention, you collapse the probabilities of fear. You cut the oxygen to anxiety. Anguish cannot survive here. Applying this force hurts. At first, your ego will resist with the ferocity of a cornered wild animal. The ego is addicted to future suffering because it grants the false illusion of control. It will make you believe that if you stop worrying, tomorrow will destroy you. It will demand that you disperse again. Do not yield a single millimeter. Keep the blade down. Every time the mind tries to escape, apply the traction toward the center, 10 times a minute if necessary. You are tying your consciousness to the mast of three-dimensional reality. As you practice this, you will experience the accumulation of critical mass, the singularity, the pure presence. When the energy leak has been completely sealed and the centripetal force has dragged your entire consciousness toward the burning core of the here and now, a state change occurs in the matter of your being. Your energy is now compressed in the space of a single millisecond. This is the singularity. In the heart of a black hole, gravity is so infinitely powerful that matter is compressed into an incalculable density in a point of zero volume. That is a singularity. In the spiritual physics of the monarch, singularity is reached when 100% of your capacity is concentrated in the present act. What occurs when a human achieves this condensation? You become the most fearsome, magnetic, and unmovable entity in the ecosystem. You acquire density. The biomass, accustomed to interacting with ghosts and dispersed minds, is not prepared to collide with an organism that is absolutely and lethally present. When the monarch enters the state of singularity, the whole world perceives it. The acoustics of the room alter. Imagine a tense business meeting. Everyone is dispersed, shouting about past offenses or future consequences. Their energies bounce like high-temperature gases, creating static and confusion. But you are anchored. You have applied the collapse. You are not in yesterday or tomorrow. You are observing the movement of lips, the tension in necks, the rhythm of breaths. You are inhabiting the chair with such physical heaviness that you seem made of depleted uranium. The room feels your mass. When you fix your gaze on someone from this state of pure presence, the effect is devastating. It is not a look of hate or anger, but a look of infinite weight. It is the look of the quantum abyss. The interlocutor will feel their own anxiety crash against an unshakable wall of lead. They will submit. They will feel that in front of them there is not a person reacting, but a perfect vacuum that does not blink. The lack of dispersion in your face will highlight the unjustified hysteria of the other. Smaller masses fall toward larger ones. By the laws of moral astrophysics, they will stop their chatter. Pure presence murders doubt and fear by spatial suffocation. In the singularity of the present, fear does not fit. There is no thermodynamic space for anguish, because anguish requires the variable future time to exist, and you have annulled that variable. In this millisecond, you have no debts. In this millisecond, you do not suffer terminal illnesses. In this millisecond, you simply exist, breathe, observe, and rule. True authority never pursues its subjects. It does not raise its voice. It does not run to put out tomorrow's fires. True authority is contractive. It sits in the center and waits. You have spent too many years donating your blood to the demons of uncertainty. You have allowed the thief of tomorrow to loot your present. You have bowed under the weight of problems the universe has not yet decided if they will occur. That weakness ends today. You are the only authority here. Cross the event horizon. Force your mind to inhabit your flesh. Anchor your boots in the ground of immediate reality with the violence of one driving a stake into ice. By concentrating all your energy in the vertex of the now, you transmute into the frozen, perfect immensity of the black hole. You devour the light of chaos and rule the galaxy in absolute silence. The vacuum is your throne. The present is your weapon. Nothing from the periphery can reach your core. You have reached the point of infinite density. Chapter 2. The Observer Effect. The Gaze that Alters Reality. If we wish to master the architecture of the reality that surrounds us, we must abandon the childish explanations of traditional psychology and enter the coldest and most exact laboratories of quantum mechanics. At the beginning of the 20th century, physics faced an experiment that forever shattered our material understanding. The scientists discovered with absolute terror that subatomic particles, the fundamental bricks that make up your body, your house, and your world, do not have a defined shape or position while no one is looking at them. When they are not observed, these particles behave like a chaotic wave, a diffuse cloud of infinite probabilities. In that state, matter is a ghost. It is a chaos of potentialities where everything can happen, but nothing is solid. In the spiritual anatomy of the human being, this physical law has a brutal, direct, and lethal application. The vast majority of the human biomass lives subject to this state of a diffuse wave. To this condition of perpetual chaos, to this fundamental weakness that turns the individual into a leaf swept by the wind of chance, we shall name the dispersion or quantum noise. Observe the tragedy of the individual who walks through the world without governing their own perception. He perceives himself as a victim. He wakes up in the morning believing that the universe is an external, gigantic, and capricious entity that does things to him. If a family argument breaks out, the dispersed individual is immediately dragged by the shockwave. If the economy fluctuates, his mood fluctuates with it. He is a mere cork on an ocean. The man and woman sick with dispersion live in a state of chronic reactivity. Having no gravitational core of their own and not being conscious observers of their ecosystem, they allow the environment to dictate the configuration of their reality. They are at the mercy of every vibration that touches their field. Look at the dynamics of human relationships from this thermodynamic perspective. When you interact with people vibrating in hysteria, complaint, or manipulation, be they your own children, subordinates, or society, they are throwing a chaotic wave of probability at you. They are throwing their quantum noise. The manipulator attacks with a complaint to see how you react. The angry adolescent throws an insult to destabilize the room. The fearful partner injects their doubts so as not to carry the panic alone. What does the dispersed elder do before this bombardment? He reacts, he defends himself, he gets offended. He raises his voice to try to put out the fire with more fire. He begins to give pleading explanations to prove he is right. He cries, demands respect, or withdraws to suffer in silence. This is the deadly illusion, believing you can order the world's chaos by participating in it. You are drowning in their mud. By reacting, by attempting to fight another's chaotic wave with your own wave of indignation, you generate what in physics is called destructive interference. You mix with the other's filth. Your energy dissolves at the periphery. You have lost the battle before speaking, for you have validated their reality. Living in this state of dispersion is the main cause of exhaustion and bitterness in maturity. You feel you have lost authority because at a subatomic level, you have surrendered control of the laboratory. You have renounced the most terrifying and creative tool in your eye sockets. The universe obeys the observer. It is time to stop being the wave bouncing against the walls. It is time to stop the hemorrhage of reactivity and execute the most violent force of quantum mechanics upon those who dare to disturb your peace. You must stop the vibration and become the steel that silences the ringing of the world's bells. Let us return to the double-slit experiment to unearth the secret of absolute power. Physicists discovered that the subatomic particle ceased to be a chaotic cloud of probabilities at a very specific moment, the exact millisecond it was observed by a measuring instrument. The cold act of looking forced it to collapse. The infinity of possibilities disintegrated instantly, and the chaos was forced to fix itself in a single, solid, and predictable material reality. The observer's gaze is the executioner of chaos. Observation alters matter. In your own sovereignty, the tactical intervention is called the collapse of the gaze. You must become the definitive measuring instrument of your ecosystem. You must apply centripetal force not only to retract your own thoughts, but to tear the chaotic energy from the environment and crush it against your immutability. The technique consists in the annihilation of verbal and motor reactivity. How is this quantum violence executed on the battlefield of a family dining room or an empire's boardroom? Visualize the scenario. An individual in your environment initiates an attack of quantum noise. They complain, raise their voice, and attempt emotional blackmail, expecting you to bite the hook or get angry. The animal instinct will beg you to speak. It will plead with you to emit a sound wave to defend yourself. You will apply the collapse. You will close your mouth with the firmness of a steel vault. You will not defend. You will not attack. You will simply fix your eyes directly on their pupils. This is not a gaze of fury, for fury is a confession of hurt. Nor is it a gaze of mockery, for mockery is a cheap emotion. The monarch's gaze is a gaze of infinite weight. It is icy, inscrutable, heavy, and absolutely empty of human emotions. You must look at the person with the coldness of a biologist at a slide. The aggressor, seeing you do not respond, will initially raise the volume. Their quantum wave will try to hit your shields harder. They expect friction to ignite fire. You will maintain the centripetal force. You will not blink. You will not move a single muscle. You will absorb their hysteria without processing it. You are telling them with your flesh, I am measuring your weakness. You are a wave of useless chaos crashing against a wall of lead, and I will not waste a milligram of oxygen on validating you. The impact of this collapse is devastating. The biomass cannot bear being observed without obtaining a reaction. The fixed, silent gaze of a superior organism dismantles the aggression of the inferior by pure thermodynamic suffocation. Finding no resistance or wall to bounce against, the aggressor's energy is exhausted. They run out of fuel. They begin to stutter. Their voice lowers, and their eyes seek to escape yours. They feel the instinctive terror of the prey, realizing the predator was not scared, but simply analyzing it. In that millisecond, the wave of their chaos collapses. You used quantum physics to force order in the room. You did not beg for respect. You collapsed their reality into ashes with your gravity. This is the peak of energy saving. The monarch who masters the observer effect does not age his heart in sterile discussions. He understands that 90% of conflicts are resolved by letting them die of starvation in the acoustic vacuum of a lethal gaze. The one who observes in silence always has the power. When the environment's quantum noise has been crushed by the centripetal force of your silence, the atmosphere of the place undergoes a dramatic transformation. The barometric pressure changes. You have ceased to be a participant in the drama to become the entity that rules the physics of the place. You have reached the state of immobility and absolute power. We shall call this final dimension the singularity of the witness or the domain of space. At the peak of this singularity, your pure presence becomes a force of nature. Observing becomes your basal state of existence. You become gravity itself. What does the monarch experience when inhabiting this center of mass? The supreme peace of immutability. Society has instilled in us the fear of others' judgment. We spend our lives fearing how others look at us. But in singularity, the polarity inverts. You are no longer the object. You are the eye of the universe. An ant cannot judge the density of a neutron star. Entering any space, your presence will dictate the geometry of reality. Dispersed people will feel the gravitational pull of your immutability. They will stop talking trivialities. Liars will feel words stick in their throats because your gaze disintegrates the lie. Governing through the observer effect grants an advantage, invulnerability to surprise. Since you are no longer a wave of probability bouncing between past and future, and you have anchored all your atoms in the present, nothing takes you unawares. You see betrayal months before it is executed. You detect financial ruin in small cracks because your eyes are not clouded by hope or fear. The pure observer sees everything precisely because he does not demand reality be any particular way. He allows reality to strip naked before his scrutiny of ice. He is the mirror that reflects the truth back to the world. Your descendants will find in this singularity a sacred terror, but also the supreme refuge. They will know they cannot manipulate or deceive you. They will see in you a patriarch or matriarch of dark stone, holding the roof of existence with the immensity of your calm, ensuring the universe does not crumble. The power of old age is the transition from hand-to-hand combat toward the ballistic warfare of gravity and radiation. The youth fights by moving his arms, the monarch subdues by paralyzing the air with his eyes. You have reached the level where your gaze is a command that requires no words to be obeyed. Do not give your energy away by reacting to mortals. Never descend from your throne to mix with the mud of quantum noise. Remember the lesson of the atom. Chaos only exists as long as no one has the courage to look it in the face. Assume your position. Close your mouth. Breathe slow. Let the whole of humanity collapse to its knees before the unnegotiable, silent, and devastating weight of your gaze. You are the stillness that defines the movement. You are the one who measures the world, and in that measuring, you create the law that all others must follow within your empire. Chapter 3. Toxic Entanglement, Cutting the Invisible Cord. At the dawn of quantum mechanics, physicists stumbled upon a phenomenon so disturbing and contrary to the classical laws of the universe that Albert Einstein himself refused to accept it, dismissively calling it spooky action at a distance. This phenomenon is known as quantum entanglement. The law dictates that when two particles interact, their physical states become forever entwined. From that moment on, it no longer matters if you separate those two particles and send one to the other end of the galaxy. If you alter the spin of the particle you have in your laboratory, the particle millions of light years away will alter its spin in that same exact millisecond. They have ceased to be two separate entities and become a single vibratory system. In astrophysics, this is a mathematical miracle. In the spiritual anatomy of the human being, it is the sentence to a life of slavery, exhaustion, and misery. We shall call this psychic pathology, this parasitic invasion that destroys the individual's peace in their stage of supposed wisdom, toxic entanglement. Observe the social fabric of humanity, especially in blood relations. Ordinary men and women create invisible cords of energy that unite them to children, partners, and friends. Initially, in the stage of child-rearing, this entanglement is biologically necessary for the survival of the species. The mother must feel the newborn's cry, but the biomass does not know when to stop the process. Years pass, children become adults in their 40s, and the elder, sick with dispersion, refuses to cut the umbilical cord of energy. They remain quantumly entangled with their entire ecosystem. The clinical symptom of this lethal dispersion is the absolute inability to maintain an independent mood. The entangled individual is an open and unprotected system. If an adult son commits a financial stupidity and panics miles away, the elder's heart accelerates in their own living room. If a daughter has a marital problem and cries on the phone, the elder loses sleep and their blood pressure spikes. The local particle is forced to chaos. Society, wrapped in a toxic and cowardly romanticism, has glorified this disease. They have told you that suffering for the problems of others is the definition of unconditional love. They have convinced you that if you do not agonize over the failures of your lineage, you are an insensitive monster. This is a destructive lie. Suffering by osmosis is not love. It is parasitic codependency. It is a massive thermodynamic energy leak. By allowing another person's emotional state to alter your heart rate, you are confessing that you have no sovereignty over your own body. You are a puppet whose strings are moved by the neuroses of others. Living in this state of quantum noise is dying in installments. The human nervous system is not designed to process the stress of 3 or 5 simultaneous lives. By being entangled, you assimilate someone else's cortisol. Your mind exhausts. You become a receiving antenna for every low vibration frequency your family emits. The true tragedy is that this sacrifice is mathematically useless. Your anguish at dawn does not pay your son's debts. Your heart palpitations do not resolve a divorce. Your suffering does not alter the matter of the other. It simply destroys yours. It is time to enter the quantum containment chamber and cut every invisible cord. In quantum physics, entanglement is extremely fragile against environmental interference. To break the ghostly connection between two particles and return their absolute independence, the scientist must force a decoherence. He must intervene, subject one particle to aggressive measurement, and force it to collapse into a fixed state. On the dissecting table of your own psyche, the tactical intervention to eradicate the infection of destructive empathy is named the collapse of the cord, or the quarantine of the core. You must apply the most violent centripetal force to tear your nerve endings from the bodies of others and retract them toward your own marrow. How is this quarantine executed in daily life? Visualize the scenario. The phone rings. It is a close relative calling in a state of crisis. They have failed or stumbled into a legal problem. They begin to vomit their panic and despair through the line. The toxic entanglement forged over decades activates immediately. Your reptilian brain receives the signal and prepares to inject the same dose of adrenaline that the caller is feeling. It is in that exact millisecond where you must let the blade of decoherence fall. You will not hang up because the monarch does not flee. You will simply apply the absolute retraction of your energy. While the other person speaks and cries, you will anchor your attention in your own breathing. You will feel the weight of your own feet on the floor. In the icy silence of your mind, you will dictate the decree of separation. Your crisis is yours. Your fear belongs to you. I refuse to vibrate at your frequency. Upon dictating this decree, you will feel an acute pain. It is the pain of emotional withdrawal. Your ego, addicted to playing the savior to demonstrate love, will scream with indignation. It will make you feel guilt. It will tell you that you are cold and treasonous. You must ignore the guilt with absolute contempt. Guilt is the last gasp of the umbilical cord before death. This force requires you to isolate your core. If the person in front of you agitates, you force yourself to relax twice as much. If they raise their voice, you lower yours to a grave whisper. You visualize a wall of armored glass descending between you and the chaos. You listen to the sound of their despair, but you block the emotional component of the transmission. You treat the other's problem as an engineer treats a failure in an engine, with analytical curiosity, but without the broken engine causing you to cry. Cutting the cord means repudiating the phrase, "It hurts me to see you like this." The monarch is not pained by the suffering of others, because they understand that suffering is the only chisel that carves maturity. If you absorb the pain of your children, you are robbing them of the lesson. You are spiritually castrating them. The greatest act of biological cruelty is being their perpetual safety net. As you execute this collapse, the dynamic will change. The individual in crisis, who expected to use your nervous system as a dump for their anguish, will crash against your quarantine. They will feel that the pipe through which they sent their venom has been sealed with lead. They will be baffled by your lack of shared panic. But you will not yield. You will maintain the traction toward the center. You will force your own energy to stay within the frontier of your skin. In the dense vacuum generated by breaking the entanglement, you will begin to experience the birth of a terrifying form of power. The invulnerability of the closed system. When the toxic entanglement has been annihilated and the centripetal force has returned every atom of your attention to your own body, your energy architecture undergoes an irreversible metamorphosis. You abandon the fragile condition of an entangled particle to become an astronomical object of colossal mass. We call this definitive state the singularity of the closed system, or the solitary splendor. In astrophysics, common stars die in binary systems. They are two suns rotating around each other, condemned to an unstable dance. But in the center of the most massive systems, there exist singular stars. They share no orbit. They do not steal energy, and they do not allow anyone to steal theirs. They are perfect closed systems. They burn with their own fuel, and their gravity is so immense they force entire planets to orbit around them. You, upon reaching the singularity of the closed system, transmute into that solitary star. The miracle of this transformation is that it annihilates the paradox of human relations. Absolute detachment does not destroy love. It purifies it until it becomes radioactive. The biomass believes that by cutting the cord of suffering, you stop loving. The opposite occurs. You love with an icy and perfect freedom. Since you are no longer entangled with their pain, you are the only one in the room capable of offering a real solution. Imagine a family catastrophe. Everyone is drowning in a sea of tears and recriminations. The group's energy disintegrates into unbearable noise, and in the middle of that shipwreck, there is you. The monarch, operating from singularity, does not get wet. You observe the crying without a single drop of that sadness piercing your quarantine. You are the surgeon operating on an open heart. If the surgeon began to cry at the sight of blood, the patient would die. Your love is the cold firmness of your pulse. You will impose order not by shouting, but by existing with greater density. Your lack of emotional reaction will become the gravitational anchor of the whole family. The young, seeing that the patriarch has not lost control of his breathing, will be forced to calm down. They will seek the shadow of your immutability. They will discover that you are a black stone fortress in the middle of the ocean, against which the waves of family chaos crash without moving a single granite block. You recover 100% of your vital energy. You enjoy the silence of your home with the fullness of an emperor, immune to any complaint. The modern world is a sticky web of shared hysterias designed to keep humanity weak and anxious. You did not survive the battles of your life to serve as the lightning rod for storms others provoked. Isolate your core. Retire your troops from the territory of vulgar empathy. Break the cords with cruelty. Assume the majestic weight of your own isolation, discovering that in the physics of the spirit, only those who refuse to suffer for the world have the real power to govern it. You are the closed system. You are the singular sun. The chaos around you is no longer your problem. It is simply your scenery. Chapter 4. The dilation of the instant governing the clock. If a primordial terror devours the soul of humanity as hair turns grey and skin reveals the relentless passage of decades, it is the maddening perception that time is accelerating. We have all heard the bitter complaint of the aging individual. The years fly by, or I have no time for anything. We shall call this chronological psychosis, this thermodynamic hysteria that turns the final years of existence into a desperate and meaningless race toward the abyss, the dispersion or the quantum noise of haste. To understand this spiritual failure, we must observe the mind's relationship with space-time. In youth, one perceives time as an infinite ocean. But as the biological body enters decline, the reptilian brain, calculating the proximity of death, enters a state of alarm. Realizing that the sand at the top of the hourglass is less than what has fallen, the individual panics. They decide to accelerate their machinery. Observe the biomass infected by this quantum noise. They live in a rush. They walk with an unstable trot. They speak hurriedly, trying to spit out the most words per second for fear that no one will listen. They eat with the urgency of a hungry animal without tasting, simply swallowing matter to reach the next task. This is the deadly illusion. The ignorant belief that if you move faster, you will squeeze more life from the years you have left. Physics proves the opposite. When an object lacking mass moves at high speed, it becomes an erratic projectile. Haste is the universal solvent of density. You are evaporating energy. The man racing the clock is a slave who has publicly assumed defeat. You cannot win a race against entropy. Entropy is the inescapable degradation of every system. By running, you generate more friction, more useless heat, and accelerate the wear of your own joints and your own nervous system. What is the most humiliating symptom of this dispersion? The absolute lack of weight in every act. When you do things in a hurry, your actions lack gravity. Your hurried advice does not penetrate your children's minds because it sounds like hysteria. Your presence does not impose respect. You are perceived as prey. The individual suffering from this noise wakes up exhausted and goes to bed terrified, having burned thousands of calories in a perpetual motion that led nowhere. Life becomes a hum of static, a motion blur where nothing has sharpness, and where the present instant is brutally murdered before even being born. You have been infected by the virus of modern urgency. They convinced you that slowness is senile clumsiness and speed is efficiency. But in the monarch's laboratory, haste is high treason. If you long to govern your years with majesty, you must apply the most terrifying law of general relativity. Einstein, with his theory of relativity, proved a chilling truth. Time is elastic. It bends, stretches, and slows in the presence of an immense gravitational mass. The denser an object is, the slower time passes around it. Near the event horizon of a black hole, time practically stops. Mass slows the tick of the universe. In your own quantum sovereignty, the intervention to cure the hysteria of haste is named the relativistic collapse or the centripetal force of dilation. You must become the gravitational mass that bends the clock. You must force time to stop by applying a braking force so brutal that your instinct screams in pain. From this precise dawn, you will declare absolute war on haste. You will take your consciousness and apply centripetal force, chaining it to the weight of your own flesh. You will execute tactical slowness. Visualize the scenario. The phone rings insistently. Someone knocks at the door. A relative asks a question. The dispersed tissue within you will order you to jump from the chair and respond instantly. It is in that millisecond where you must let the blade of collapse fall. You will not jump. You will not run. You will apply massive resistance against your own impulse. You will breathe deeply, forcing the leaden diaphragm down. Turn your head toward the sound with an exasperating, mechanical, glacial slowness. Walk toward the door with the rhythmic gait of an emperor who knows the world will wait. If asked a question, do not let the answer shoot from your lips. Exercise retraction. Bite the answer. Let silence expand for 3 seconds. Then, emit your verb with a cadence reduced to half speed. Articulate each syllable with the density of granite falling on steel. This application is psychological torture for the hyperactive ego. Your brain will scream, "Hurry up, you are making them wait. They will be angry, you are wasting time." You must murder that voice like a sniper. That panic is not yours. It is the programming of a slave society. You are applying the relativistic brake. By forcing your body to move in slow motion, you are containing kinetic energy. You are gaining mass. This has nothing to do with lethargy or clumsiness. It is the isometric tension of the elite predator. A Siberian tiger does not trot. It moves with a slowness that freezes the blood of its prey. By forcing the relativistic collapse, you will feel friction against the environment. Hurried people will crash into your slowness and feel deeply uncomfortable. They will try to rush you. You will absorb that pressure without flinching, responding only with a colder gaze and a slower movement. You are demonstrating that their urgency is a problem of their own dispersed minds and that it lacks the mass to alter your rotation. You are preparing for the supreme state. When the quantum noise of haste has been crushed, the fabric of space-time around you experiences a radical curvature. You leave chronological time, the linear time of scared men, and enter the dimension of infinite gravity. We call this the singularity of the instant or geological time. You are the black hole. In the singularity, the external rules do not apply. Time does not push matter. It bows to mass. By reaching geological time, you devour the urgency of your ecosystem. Your biological perception transmutes. The panic of aging and the feeling that years pass too fast disintegrates by physical impossibility. Why do the years of the biomass fly? Because they are empty. They lived running, passing over details without attention. But when the monarch executes the dilation of the instant, every second expands to the size of a galaxy. Eating becomes a dense experience. Listening allows you to register micro-expressions. You have filled the second with so much conscious mass that it becomes eternal. You have cured the fear of death by discovering how to make a Tuesday afternoon contain more reality than 10 years of a dispersed life. The thermodynamic impact of your singularity on your family is devastating. Imagine a heated discussion. Relatives are firing words at light speed. You sit at the head of the table. You have activated geological time. You do not raise your voice. You execute the slowness of a supermassive star. When you intervene, you will raise a hand with glacial parsimony. It will absorb the oxygen. Pronounce your words with a stretched cadence. The mass always subdues the lighter mass. Hysteria is fragile. Conscious slowness is indestructible. They will feel the time around them thicken. They will feel the thermodynamic suffocation of trying to run underwater. Their pulses will be forced to sync with yours. Without a single direct order, you have dilated the instant for the room. The world demands speed because it is designed to consume you. The machinery of society feeds on the friction of your anxiety. But you have cut the cables. You are the molten rock at the center of the planet, whose slow rotation protects the globe. Stop looking at the clock with the terror of a slave. You do not have to arrive anywhere. You are the center of all coordinates. Breathe with the oceanic depth of the Leviathan. Move with the icy arrogance of one who knows eternity is not a long time, but a single instant inhabited with absolute density. Chapter 5. Conscious Matter, the Awakening of the Flesh. If there is a philosophical and biological error that has condemned humanity to a fragile, fearful existence devoid of true authority, it is the cursed legacy of Cartesian dualism. We have been brainwashed for centuries with the tragic illusion that we are brilliant minds accidentally trapped in containers of defective meat. Modern society has exacerbated this disease into a thermodynamic epidemic. It worships abstraction, incessant thought, the digital world, and the intellectualization of life, while it despises, ignores, and flees in terror from the raw, dense, and lethal reality of the physical body. It is a mass evacuation of the self. Upon reaching maturity, when the biological body begins to claim the price of lived decades through joint pain, fatigue, and loss of agility, the biomass commits the most pathetic act of quantum treason of its existence. Instead of inhabiting their flesh with greater ferocity, the ordinary individual becomes scared. They decide to abandon their body. They evacuate their own limbs and withdraw all their energy toward the dark and noisy attic of their skull. We shall call this state of physical evaporation, this lethal disconnection where the mind floats like a drifting balloon while the body rots in neglect, the dispersion or the quantum noise of the flesh. Observe the vast majority of people around you. Look at them walking down the street, sitting at the table, or interacting with their environment. They are not there, they are three-dimensional specters. In particle physics, there is an elementary particle called the neutrino. Its mass is so ridiculously small it can pass through Earth. The neutrino passes through the entire planet from side to side without colliding or interacting with a single atom of matter. The dispersed elder is a human neutrino. He is a ghost. Having disconnected his consciousness from his nerve terminals to take refuge in the labyrinth of memories or future anxieties, he ceases to register reality. When he eats, he does not chew the food. He simply ingests calories while his mind argues with an imaginary relative. When he showers, he does not feel the thermal impact of the water on his skin. His head is busy solving a banking problem. When he walks, his feet do not dialogue with the gravity of the ground. They drag by inertia, stumbling over corners, because the autopilot is blind and clumsy. This is the deadly illusion. Believing you can govern your life from the ivory tower of your intellect while ignoring the vehicle of blood, bone, and gravity that anchors you to the universe. You are a captain who has abandoned the bridge. The result of this quantum noise is the collapse of presence. The physical universe, the ecosystem of your family and society, do not interact with your thoughts. They interact with your body mass. If you do not occupy your own body, if your flesh is empty of consciousness, you become transparent to the world. People interrupt you when you speak because they perceive no weight in your ribcage. Your children ignore you because your physical posture denotes the fragility of an empty shell. You bump into furniture, spill coffee, forget where you put the keys, and feel chronically disconnected from reality. You are fading. By fleeing the body because it ages or hurts, you commit thermodynamic suicide. The knee pain, the sting in the back, or the weight of fatigue are not tragedies. They are spatial coordinates. They are the electrical signals nature sends to remind you where you end and where the universe begins. You must listen to the nerves. The man who anesthetizes himself against the physical sensations of his own old age, seeking the lethargy of television, alcohol, pills, or nostalgic daydreaming, is dissolving his center of gravity. He becomes an anesthetized organism, floating in a sea of static, waiting for biological death to collect a long-abandoned corpse. If you wish to hold the crown of the immortals, if you long for your mere physical presence in a room to alter the temperature and barometric pressure of the place, you must descend from the attic of your thoughts. You must abandon cowardly abstraction. It is time to return to the trench of matter. It is time to apply the most crushing force of quantum mechanics to force your soul to incarnate, with violence and without mercy, into the last corner of your muscular tissue. You must fill every cell with the light of your attention until your body glows with the density of a star. The evacuation ends today. In astrophysics, for a diffuse and gigantic nebula of gas and cosmic dust to become a solid, dense planet capable of harboring the fury of volcanoes and the immensity of oceans, a gravitational collapse must occur. Dispersed matter must be dragged toward a common center by a crushing centripetal force. Atoms must collide, fuse, generate extreme heat, and compress until molten rock crystallizes. Without this brutal collapse, the nebula would remain a transparent smudge in the telescope, unable to possess an orbit, unable to have gravity, unable to matter. Your consciousness requires this same internal compaction. In the operating room of your own biology, the intervention you must execute to cure the anesthesia of your existence and annihilate the ghost you have become is named the sensory collapse, or the centripetal force of the flesh. You must become the architect of your own gravitational collapse. You must take your mind, that fearful, noisy, and abstract entity that wants to flee toward the clouds of thought, grab it by the neck, and smash it against the boiling asphalt of your own neurology. The technique consists of the aggressive, constant, and sadistic reconnection with your tactile experience. How is this physical impact executed in the mediocrity of an ordinary day? Visualize the scenario. You are sitting in your living room. Your mind, infected by quantum noise, begins to float. You start thinking about an argument you had yesterday or a political problem on the news. You are evaporating. It is in that exact millisecond where you must drop the anvil of the collapse. You will cut the thought at the root and send 100% of your computer processing capacity toward your nerve endings. You will order your brain, anchor. Immediately, you will seek the sensation of gravity. You will feel the weight of your own glutes and thighs crushing the fabric of the armchair. You will not think it, you will feel it. You will move your consciousness to the soles of your feet and perceive the pressure of the wood, the texture of the sock, the floor's temperature. You will feel the clothes. You will feel the dull beat of your heart striking against the inside of your ribs. You will force the wave function of your intellect to collapse into the absolute density of the matter you inhabit. Sensory collapse must be applied to all biological functions that the biomass performs in automatic mode. From today, you will not ingest food like an automaton filling a fuel tank. When you sit at the table, you will turn off the television, silence the phones, and look at the plate as if it were the first and last meal of your life. You will chew each piece of meat with deliberate and predatory slowness. You will force your taste buds to register the salt, the fat, the texture, and the temperature. You will feel the mechanical act of swallowing. You will turn the act of eating into a declaration of war against dispersion. When you walk down the street, you will not do so with your gaze lost in the stratosphere. Apply the centripetal force to your skeleton. Walk feeling how your heel strikes the pavement, how the knee absorbs the impact, how the spinal column rises to support the skull. If it is cold, you will not shrink or complain. You will open the pores of your perception and embrace the cold. Feel how the ice sharpens the frontier of your skin, using the extreme temperature to awaken the cellular metabolism of your sovereignty. This aggressive reconnection with the flesh includes a total rewriting of your relationship with pain. Weak society taught you to take pills at the first symptom of discomfort. They taught you to flee physical pain as if it were a curse. But the monarch who executes the sensory collapse uses joint pain or the fatigue of years not as a reason for lament, but as a titanium anchor. When your knee hurts, the biomass cries. The monarch instead closes his eyes and focuses. He breathes deeply and focuses his entire mind on that pain. He dives into it. He observes it without judging it. And in doing so, the pain ceases to be suffering to become an intense thermodynamic sensation that reminds him with icy and perfect certainty that he is not yet a corpse. Pain is the irrefutable proof that you have mass, that you exist. By applying this centripetal force continuously throughout the day, mental noise is suffocated. Abstract thoughts of anxiety or nostalgia cannot survive when the brain is busy processing the massive flow of pure sensory information of the present. Fear requires abstraction. Matter knows no fear, it only knows presence. By forcing your mind to incarnate, you seal the energy leaks. You densify your biology. and in the core of that inescapable physical compression, you prepare the anatomical ground for the final state, absolute power. When the fog of abstract thought has dissipated, when the centripetal force has dragged every milligram of your consciousness into your nervous, muscular, and bony tissue, the organism experiences a fusion at the subatomic level. You cease to be a mind traveling inside a defective body. Cartesian duality is annihilated. The driver and the vehicle merge into a single indestructible alloy. To this terminal state, the master implant that crowns the density of your being, we shall call the singularity of awakening, or the state of conscious matter. This is the end of the spectral life. In quantum physics, when matter is condensed at temperatures near absolute zero, particles lose their individuality and act as a single gigantic superatom, a Bose-Einstein condensate. The entire system moves in unison, with perfect coherence, without friction or resistance. You are now that superatom. Reaching the state of conscious matter is exactly that. Your intellect, emotions, and biology synchronize in a single wave frequency, creating a physical object of overwhelming density. What happens in the 3D fabric of the world when you operate from this singularity? The terror of pure gravity occurs, or gravity. You acquire a specific weight that alters the mechanics of any room you step into. Since you are absolutely and lethally present in every inch of your skin, your movements cease to be clumsy, erratic, or nervous. Conscious matter does not hurry and does not stumble. You are a geological event. Imagine you enter a meeting room or your living room where a family conflict is brewing. You do not enter thinking about what you are going to say. You enter anchored in the soles of your feet. You inhabit your body with such immensity that the physical space around you seems to curve. The biomass, living disconnected from their own flesh, perceives your entrance as if a 1,000-ton block of black granite had just been deposited in the center of the room. Your silence is not the silence of having nothing to say. It is the acoustic silence of a massive object that absorbs sound. When you sit, you do not drop into the chair, you take possession of the spatial coordinate. When you look at someone, you do not look only with your eyes, you look with the full weight of your nervous system, breathing from the bottom of your abdomen, projecting a solidity that freezes the blood. Governing from this state is the best-kept secret of supreme authority. People do not obey logical arguments or emotional pleas. Human nature, at its deepest biological level, only obeys the laws of gravitational physics. The lesser organism invariably submits to the greater organism. This is the law. The greater organism is not the tallest or the fattest, it is the one with the highest conscious density. When you are conscious matter, your words cease to be sounds to become physical impacts. Being totally rooted in your body, your voice leaves the shrill throat of anxiety and descends to the chest. Your decrees acquire a sub-bass, vibrating tectonic tone. A simple no pronounced from this state of absolute anchoring has the destructive force of an earthquake. The walls tremble. The interlocutor feels the impact in their own sternum, and their rational mind disconnects, forced to bow to your superiority. Old age, that process of wear that terrifies cowards, becomes your greatest tactical advantage under the light of conscious matter. Youth is elastic, fast, and dispersed. It runs everywhere because it does not know where its center is. The old monarch, however, does not need to run. He is the center. The wrinkles on your face and the slowness of your joints are not signs of weakness. They are the concentric rings of a 1,000-year-old oak. They are proof that you have survived the fire of the universe and crystallized. You are not a fading body, you are a hyperdense neutron star. You have lost the superfluous gas of youth to remain only with the hyperdense core of pure presence. Do not let society turn you into a ghost before your time. Do not assume the undignified role of the elder living in memories. Your body is the temple of your authority and the anchor of your empire. Awaken your flesh. Feel gravity crushing your shoulders and smile back at the universe with the icy, ruthless arrogance of conscious matter. A living organism that knows exactly what it weighs and categorically refuses to let the world move it a single millimeter without its express, absolute, and lethal consent. Chapter 6. The Probability Collapse, the death of doubt. If we delve into the darkest and most fascinating postulates of quantum mechanics, we will discover a concept that defies all the logic of our daily experience: the superposition of states. In the subatomic realm, before a particle is measured or observed, it does not occupy a fixed place in space. It is neither white nor black. It does not spin up, nor does it spin down. It exists in a ghostly, mathematical, and diffuse state where all possibilities, however contradictory they may be, occur simultaneously. It is a cloud of infinite probabilities. But this cloud, although it contains all the potential of the universe, completely lacks solidity. It has no tactile mass. It cannot interact with dense matter until one of those possibilities becomes concrete and the others are annihilated. In the mental and spiritual architecture of the human biomass, this state of quantum superposition has a name we all know, a poison we have all tasted, and a disease that devours dignity. We call this doubt. To this paralysis by analysis, to this pathological incapacity to fix a coordinate in the universe through an irrevocable decision, we shall name the dispersion or the quantum noise of uncertainty. Observe the vast majority of people who have accumulated decades of life but lack sovereignty. They live submerged in a sea of chronic indecision. Faced with any crossroads, whether to sell a property, cut a toxic relationship, or simply set a limit in their own home, the dispersed individual refuses to decide. His mind fragments into 10 or 20 different timelines. He imagines the scenario where he says yes and is terrified. He imagines the scenario where he says no and is paralyzed by guilt. He weighs, calculates, anticipates, suffers, and breaks out in cold sweats in the early hours. To relieve the unbearable pressure of this superposition of states, the elder, sick with doubt, commits the most humiliating act of weakness. He goes out to ask for opinions. He goes from one child to another, calls his friends, consults his neighbors. He begs for validation. He hands the helm of his own existence to anyone willing to listen, secretly praying that someone will make the decision for him so as not to have to carry the crushing weight of responsibility. He creates a noisy parliament. He turns his mind into a place full of discordant voices, where every foreign opinion adds a new frequency of static to his own confusion. This is the deadly illusion, the absurd and childish belief that, by delaying a decision and keeping options open, you are protecting yourself from error. They made you believe it is wisdom. The physics of power proves exactly the opposite. Maintaining multiple probabilities open simultaneously requires a colossal expenditure of caloric and neurological energy. Your brain is financing the existence of 10 ghost futures at once. This is why doubt exhausts far more than physical labor. Indecision drains your battery. It robs you of sleep, inflames your nervous system, and steals your appetite. By not deciding, you are not protecting yourself. You are evaporating. What is the gravitational result of living in this quantum noise? The evaporation of your authority. Absolutely no one respects an individual who does not know what they want. When your family observes that you doubt eternally, that you change your opinion based on who spoke to you last, they instinctively stop seeing you as the first cause of the lineage. They lose biological respect for you. A leader who hesitates, who asks permission to exist and delegates decisions, becomes a subordinate. You cannot govern an empire if you refuse to sign the decrees. Nature abhors a vacuum, but it abhors the lukewarmness of the fog even more. The material universe only responds to force, definition, and the sharp edges of solid matter. If you wish to be crowned with immutability, you must learn to murder doubt. In the language of ancient empires, etymology hides the naked truth of human anatomy. The word decide comes from the Latin decidere, composed of the prefix de, separation, descent, and the verb saedere, to cut, to kill, to fell. To decide does not mean to choose the right thing. Deciding means, literally, to cut and to kill. When a quantum physicist performs a measurement on a particle in a state of superposition, the probability wave collapses. Of the infinite possibilities that existed a millisecond ago, nature is forced to choose only one. As that single reality materializes, all other possible realities are annihilated on the spot. They die. They cease to exist forever. In the dissecting table of your own character, the intervention to cure the paralysis of analysis and annihilate the energy leak of doubt is named the probability collapse or the centripetal force of decision. You must become the executioner of your alternative timelines. You must apply the centripetal force to retract all the energy you have dispersed in the what-if, and concentrate it into the blade of a mental guillotine that will fall with unnegotiable violence on the neck of your options. How is this quantum massacre executed in your daily life? Visualize the crossroads. You are facing a serious problem that demands a resolution. Your mind, infected by the habit of weakness, will try to open the fan of infinite probabilities. You will feel the terror of being wrong. You will feel the addictive impulse to pick up the phone and ask someone else what they would do in your place. It is in that exact millisecond where you will apply the centripetal force. You will pull your hand away from the phone. You will lock yourself in the quietest room of your house. You will sit in absolute solitude. You will forbid yourself from asking for one more opinion. You will collect the cold data and then invoke the collapse. You will make the decision. You will not seek the perfect decision, because perfection is a mathematical lie designed to paralyze cowardly perfectionists. You will seek the radical decision. You will choose one option, and in the exact moment you choose it, you will drop the steel blade on all the others. If you decide to sell, the option to keep dies bloody. If you decide to cut a relationship, the option to reconcile is decapitated without mercy. If you decide to move, the option to stay is annihilated to its foundations. The pain of executing this cut is immense for the ego. You will feel vertigo. You will feel the terror of the void. By murdering the alternative options, you are left without a safety net. You have crossed the Rubicon and burned the ships behind you. There is no turning back. But the incision demands an unshakable physical rule, the absolute prohibition of regret. It is a titanium suture. Regret is the necromancy of losers. It is the pathetic attempt to resuscitate a quantum corpse. When you make a decision and then, days or months later, you look back and say, "Oh, if only I had chosen the other," you are digging up the probability you murdered. You are opening the wound and leaking energy. The monarch never regrets. Once the guillotine falls, the blood is cleaned, and the body of the discarded option is incinerated. If the decision results in a disaster, you do not lament or look back. You simply absorb the new problem, process it in your furnace, and make a new decision from the current coordinate. You assume the weight of your error with the same icy and perfect arrogance with which you assume your victories. You know that to err with determination and poise is infinitely superior to getting it right by accident while trembling with doubt. By forcing the collapse, you will feel a release of energy. The tons of brain fuel you spent keeping 10 different mental simulations alive are suddenly released and at your disposal in the present millisecond. The confusion is suffocated. The fog dissipates. And in the cleared, smoking ground that remains after the execution of doubt, the structure of pure will emerges. When the quantum noise of indecision has been decapitated by the blade of your verdict, and the centripetal force has annihilated all parallel realities, the atmosphere around you experiences a tectonic compression. You leave the state of a doubtful vibrating particle to transmute into the entity that defines reality. We shall call this new master implant the singularity of the decree, or the weight of certainty. In the center of the vortex of presence, a metaphysical phenomenon occurs. Matter does not obey the right decision. Matter obeys the dense decision. Absolute certainty is a violent gravitational force. The biomass believes you must always be right to succeed. The monarch knows that if he imposes enough mass and density to his decision, reality itself will be forced to curve around his decree to prove him right. What does the individual who has reached the weight of certainty experience? Icy peace. Since you have murdered doubt in the containment chamber of your own mind, when you go out to interact with your family or your business, your words cease to be suggestions or hypotheses. Your words become finished facts, innegotiable decrees. Visualize the thermodynamic impact of this state on your lineage. You gather your family to communicate a difficult decision. They enter the room bringing their own dispersion, unsolicited opinions, and readiness to debate. They expect to find the complacent elder with the doubtful mind they can manipulate through emotional blackmail or logical arguments. But you are singular. You are not going to ask for permission. You are not going to consult them. You are going to inform them of the quantum wave collapse. You look at them with the eye of the witness. You breathe with the abyssal lung, and with a deep, grave voice devoid of doubt, you pronounce your decision. The impact is devastating. Words born from a mind that harbors not an atom of indecision have an acoustic density that is unbearable for the weak. When you speak from absolute certainty, there is no room for debate. The frequency of your voice says, "The debate ended before it began. Options are dead." Your relatives will feel the shock against the wall of lead. Some will try to complain. They will try to resurrect the quantum noise by offering last-minute alternatives. But what if we do this instead? Are you sure? Think about it. You will not discuss. You will not defend your decision with pleading arguments. Arguing is the confession of one who needs to convince others to convince himself. You will simply hold the dense, heavy, and crushing silence of the vortex. You will stare at them, letting their protests disintegrate against your immutability. You will reaffirm, "My decision is final. The subject is closed." The collective relief following this act of quantum dictatorship is the best-kept secret of human psychology. People, in the depths of their being, are terrified by free will and the chaos of the universe. They desperately seek a lighthouse, an anchor, an unmovable object around which they can orbit safely. Though they complain of your coldness, your family will sleep 1,000 times more peacefully, knowing that at the head of the table there is a monarch who does not tremble, who does not doubt, and who is willing to carry the consequences of history without shedding a single tear of regret or hesitation. This is the peak of material freedom. You reclaim the absolute reins of your time and space. By ceasing to ask others how you should live your last years, you reclaim your dignity. By ceasing to doubt, you reclaim your vital energy. By assuming the weight of your sentences, you become gravity itself. Old age will rob you of physical reaction speed, but it demands maximum speed of spiritual execution. There is no time for fog. There is no room for error. The clock ticks, and every millisecond you spend doubting is a millisecond in which you have voluntarily renounced the crown. Decide now. Wield the knife. Look straight at the multitude of infinite possibilities that torment your mind. Choose one. Bring down your arm with all the centripetal force of your will and murder the others without mercy and without looking back. Enjoy the sepulchral silence that follows the collapse. Rule your own reality. Chapter 7. Interference Frequencies, the Shielding of the Core. To understand the astonishing fragility in which the ordinary human mind dwells, we must turn our gaze away from solid matter and delve into the invisible science of waves, acoustics, and electromagnetism. In fundamental physics, we know with absolute certainty that the entire universe is nothing but an ungraspable ocean of vibrations. From the pulsating beat of a quasar billions of light years away, to the frenzied spin of electrons in the wooden table upon which you rest your hands, everything, absolutely everything, emits a frequency. The universe transmits without ceasing. The human brain and the central nervous system are no strangers to this law of physics. In fact, they constitute the most sophisticated, complex, and tragically vulnerable receiving antenna of all biological creation. Your mind is designed to pick up signals, but when this antenna lacks adequate shielding, when the individual has not forged a thermodynamic filter to discriminate which waves enter their inner sanctuary, when that filter is missing, a silent catastrophe occurs. We shall call this electromagnetic invasion, this parasitic penetration that destroys the peace of the human being in their stage of greatest vulnerability, the dispersion or the quantum noise of interference. Observe with a clinical and ruthless gaze the ordinary behavior. Observe the behavior of the vast majority of the biomass that has entered the autumn of its existence. Men and women who have left behind the obligations of youth and who, instead of using their time to crystallize their wisdom, commit the most humiliating act of self-sabotage. They turn their receivers to the maximum volume. They connect to the frequency of global chaos. The elder, sick with dispersion, lives in a state of perpetual tuning with terror. He turns on the television first thing in the morning and allows the news programs to vomit over the rug of his living room economic tragedies, wars in distant continents, and horrendous crimes. He goes out into the street or meets with his social circle and tunes into the frequency of gossip, absorbing the complaints of his neighbors, the illnesses of his acquaintances, and the miseries of society. This is the deadly illusion. Modern culture has convinced the individual that absorbing this trash is a civic duty. They have brainwashed him into believing that being informed about the pain of the world is synonymous with being an empathetic, responsible, and intelligent person. Thermodynamic physics and wave mechanics repudiate this fallacy with absolute disgust. In structural engineering, there is a phenomenon called mechanical resonance. If a constant wind hits a suspension bridge of steel and concrete at exactly the same natural frequency in which the bridge structure vibrates, the waves add up. The energy accumulates. The bridge begins to oscillate violently, and although built to support thousands of tons, resonance ends up tearing it apart. This is exactly what happens to your spirit when you allow the frequencies of fear, indignation, and collective hysteria to penetrate your mental field. The modern world is a gigantic emitter of low vibration. When you sit passively to listen to disaster news or dramas you cannot solve, that energy penetrates you. Your nervous system, which is a biological antenna, begins to vibrate in sympathy with that terror. It enters into resonance with the tragedy. What is the clinical result of this destructive interference? The pulverization of your center of mass. The individual who absorbs the noise of the world suffers from insomnia. He suffers from tachycardia and a suffocating anguish over problems about which he has absolutely no physical, legal, or moral jurisdiction. He spends thousands of calories daily becoming indignant over the decisions of politicians who do not know his name or over the fall of financial markets he is not in. His vital energy, that majestic force that should be contained in his core to sustain his own lineage, leaks through his pores, evaporating into the air in the form of sighs and bitter complaints. An organism that vibrates to the rhythm of collective hysteria is an organism that has lost its sovereignty and its power. By leaving the gates of your perception wide open, you have allowed the mud of the street to flood the throne room of your own palace. You have become an acoustic dumpster. Nature abhors systems without borders, because systems open to entropy always end up dying by freezing or by chaos. You must shield your core. If you long to reach the immutability of the monarchs, if you wish to govern your reality with the weight of a neutron star and not be dragged like cosmic dust by the solar wind of others' hysteria, you must prepare to execute the most radical defensive engineering of your existence. You must forge an impenetrable shield. To stop the invasion of interference waves and annihilate the destructive resonance that is tearing your peace apart, good intentions and positive thinking are not enough. Physics requires the application of a material and geometric countermeasure. In the science of electromagnetism, we use the Faraday cage. A Faraday cage is a wrap of conducting material that completely cancels out external electric fields. When a discharge of millions of volts hits the cage, the electricity slides off the exterior, leaving the interior in a dead, sterile, and absolutely safe calm. It is the ultimate protection for precision equipment. In the dissecting table of your own psyche, the tactical intervention you must execute to cure the hemorrhage of your attention and repel the noise of the world is called the collapse of the antenna, or the centripetal force of shielding. You must become the chief engineer of your own mental Faraday cage. You must apply a relentless centripetal force to retract your external sensors, disconnect the cables that link you to the matrix of global drama, and isolate your core in a hermetic, sadistic, and unnegotiable manner. How is this shield forged in the theater of operations of your daily routine? It consists of the active and violent expulsion of white noise through the execution of the vacuum diet. From this precise moment, you will declare yourself in thermodynamic rebellion against the industry of terror and banal entertainment. Visualize the daily scenario. You enter the room and the screen is on. The screen is vomiting unemployment figures or political debates full of shouting and insults. The diseased tissue of the biomass that still dwells within you will ask you to sit on the sofa. It will tell you, listen a little. It is important to know what is happening in the world. In that millisecond, activate the shield. You will not sit. You will not listen. You will take the remote control with the coldness of an executioner and turn off the screen, plunging the room into a majestic silence. You will cut the supply of electromagnetic poison on the spot. If the screen cannot be turned off, you will turn off your assimilation. You will turn your head, close the ears of your intellect, and retract your energy toward your own diaphragm, denying that vibration permission to enter your bloodstream. But the construction of the Faraday cage demands an even more painful application in the social sphere. You must be ruthless. When you meet with friends or family and the conversation descends toward the frequencies of interference, destructive gossip, complaints about the weather, criticism of absent third parties, you must execute the collapse. The mammalian instinct will beg you to nod, to offer an opinion, to belong to the tribe. You will murder that need for belonging with the blade of your will. You will not nod. You will not smile out of commitment. You will not emit a single syllable that validates that low frequency. You will apply centripetal force. You will sink your center of gravity into the chair and look at them coldly. Look at the interlocutors with the eye of the witness, and let the heavy silence of your tactical disapproval fall on the table like an anvil. If the noise continues and threatens to pierce your shield, you will use the language of absolute sovereignty. You will rise with geological slowness and speak. You will say, "This conversation lacks value and exhausts my energy. I am leaving." And you will leave the room without looking back, without giving explanations, and without apologizing. Applying this level of isolation generates a brutal friction with the environment. Your ego will scream in panic. Society, which bases its cohesion on shared fear and indignation, will attack you. They will call you ignorant, apathetic, embittered, or disconnected from reality. They will tell you that you live in a bubble. You must receive these accusations not as insults, but as high-grade military decorations. They are confirming empirically that the Faraday cage works. Your bubble is not made of fragile glass. It is a sphere of dense titanium forged at melting temperature. You are consciously choosing tactical ignorance. You understand that 99% of information is radioactive trash designed to steal your mass. By refusing to participate in interference frequencies, you stop the destructive resonance of your own bridge. By closing the entry valves, your mind stops processing the mud of others. And in that sudden vacuum, you prepare the thermodynamic atmosphere for the crystallization of your true empire. When the quantum noise of the outside world has been repelled by the impenetrable mesh of your Faraday cage and the centripetal force has purged every atom of useless indignation, the space surrounding your physical body experiences an architectural mutation. You leave the state of a fragile receiving antenna. You transmute into the entity that absorbs and disintegrates chaos. To this basal state of absolute isolation and infinite gravity, we shall call the singularity of silence or the anechoic chamber. In the most advanced acoustic engineering of our world, the pinnacle of design is the anechoic chamber. It is a room lined with geometrically perfect absorbent materials designed with a single purpose: to devour sound. Inside an anechoic chamber, there is no echo. There is no reverberation. When a sound wave hits the walls of this chamber, it does not bounce. The wave disintegrates instantly. The silence inside is so deep that human ears begin to hear the pumping of their own heart and the friction of their own lungs. It is a silence that maddens the weak, but offers definitive peace to pure observers. By reaching the singularity, you become a living anechoic chamber. You walk through the halls of your life surrounded by a force field of total absorption. By operating from this state of quantum isolation, the exchange relationship between you and human chaos is neutralized. There is no longer friction, because friction requires two rigid surfaces clashing. You have ceased to be rigid toward the exterior. You are the vacuum that swallows the bullet. What happens when the monarch is operating with the shielding of the core? Imagine a high-tension scenario. A crisis hits your company or family. Panic breaks out. People run and vomit interference frequencies. They project their future anxieties and desperately seek someone to blame. They emit a deafening quantum noise, but then that tide of noise approaches you. When the hysteria attempts to touch your gravitational field, it crashes against the absorbent wedges of your anechoic chamber. You remain still. The complaints of your relatives reach your ears, but they do not bounce. They do not generate an echo of panic in your chest. You do not respond with another complaint. You do not defend yourself. You observe them with the crushing weight of conscious matter, breathing with the sub-bass slowness of the Leviathan. The chaos suffocates. Upon clashing against you, the energy of panic disintegrates in the air. The biomass around you experiences a devastating thermodynamic shock. They are used to noise, generating more noise. When they discover that shouting at you is like shouting at a dark abyss, they lose their breath. They feel ridiculous. Their hysteria dies out quickly due to a lack of acoustic oxygen. Without you lifting a finger, you have imposed silence in the room. You have collapsed their chaotic waves simply by refusing to provide them with a surface to bounce off. You have reclaimed your space and your time. The majestic freedom granted by the shielding of the core is the final reward for those who dare to reign over their own old age. Since you no longer care what the news programs say, you recover 100% of your brain's processing capacity. That energy is now channeled toward your center. Your health strengthens in a way that defies medical science, because a body not bathed in others' cortisol regenerates with brutal efficacy. Your thoughts become crystalline. You can read a complex book or contemplate the sun with a sharpness that dispersed men will never know in 1,000 lives. You have become a quantum anomaly, a closed system in a universe dying from information excess. Your descendants will look at you with a reverential, incomprehensible, and sacred terror. They will realize they cannot manipulate you. They will see you are the black granite fortress that absorbs earthquakes. Do not yield another millimeter of your mental space. Do not rent the interior of your skull to the industry of fear or the choir of family laments. The material universe is crumbling. Let it crumble at its own pace. Close the steel doors of your anechoic chamber. Turn off the receivers. Breathe the silence. Govern the ecosystem with the cold, majestic, and lethal security of one who has discovered that true absolute power consists of having the divine arrogance that the world, with all its noise and fury, matters to you absolutely, thermodynamically, and mathematically nothing. You are the silence. Chapter 8. The Density of the Void, the Weight of the Invisible. To understand the root of the terror that governs the vast majority of the human species, we must direct our attention toward one of the most disturbing discoveries of modern physics and cosmology, the nature of the vacuum. When you observe an atom, common sense dictates that you are observing solid matter, but science says otherwise. Quantum mechanics reveals a chilling truth. The atom is, in 99.99%, empty space. If you eliminated the vacuum from all the atoms that compose the 8 billion human beings inhabiting the Earth, the entire species could be compressed into the volume of a simple sugar cube. The universe is an ocean of void. However, despite the fact that the vacuum is the very essence of our composition and our environment, the ordinary mind, frightened and lacking sovereignty, has an insurmountable biological panic of it. In the history of art and psychology, this phobia is known as horror vacui, the fear of empty space. This is a ruinous pathology. In the spiritual anatomy of the aging biomass, this terror is the primary cause of its thermodynamic ruin. We shall call this hysterical need to flee from nothingness, the dispersion or the quantum noise of accumulation. Observe with a clinical eye how the individual who suffers from this existential phobia lives. It is a pathetic sight. Their entire life is a desperate, sweaty, and pathetic attempt to fill the gaps. They fear the silence of their own home, so they turn on the television or the radio as soon as they cross the door, not to listen to something specific, but simply to generate a wall of noise that drowns out the vacuum of the room. It is a constant escape. They fear the boredom of a Sunday afternoon, so they fill their agenda with useless meetings, forced family visits, and activities that bring them no real value, only to keep their body in motion. At a material level, the dispersed individual is a chronic accumulator. They fill their closets with clothes they do not use. It is a burden. They fill their shelves with meaningless decorative objects and fill their heritage with responsibilities that suffocate them. They believe, in their infinite quantum ignorance, that the more things they possess, the more noise they generate, and the more people surround them, the greater their importance in the universe. This is the deadly illusion, the thermodynamic lie of believing that the density of a human being is measured by the amount of inorganic matter or social noise they manage to heap around themselves. The physical reality is that this accumulation is the clinical symptom of a terrifying weakness. It is the signature of the hollow man. The man who needs to fill his life with incessant stimuli is a man who cannot bear the weight of his own company. When you strip an ordinary individual of their mobile phone, their friendships, their work, and their entertainment, and lock them in a completely empty and silent room, the individual goes insane. They panic. Having no external stimuli against which to bounce their energy, they are forced to look toward their own core. And what they discover there terrifies them. They discover that without their toys, without their distractions, and without the applause of others, they are no one. They discover that their interior is a diffuse hologram. The quantum noise of accumulation is a massive energy leak. Maintaining all those possessions, feeding all those superficial relationships, and processing all that constant noise requires a monstrous caloric and neurological expenditure. The elder who lives surrounded by excess exhausts himself. His nervous system overloads. He becomes a slave to the things he owns and a hostage to the entertainment he consumes. You cannot reach the majesty of the first cause if your castle is cluttered with junk. The true emperor does not demonstrate his power by accumulating furniture in the throne room. He demonstrates it by keeping the hall immensely empty. He keeps the hall immensely large, immensely cold, and immensely empty, forcing visitors to walk dozens of meters in absolute silence before daring to address him. If you long to master the vortex of presence, you must stop fleeing from nothingness. You must prepare to execute the most radical work of emptying of your existence. You must invite the vacuum to enter your house, and you must learn to breathe it without your pulse trembling. Only in that absolute desolation can the true mass of your spirit be measured. Only when the noise stops can the frequency of your sovereign will begin to vibrate with the power to alter the fabric of reality itself. In the advanced study of acoustics and vibration, disciplines that govern the harmony of the cosmos, mastery is not found in the ability to emit sound constantly. In the highest fidelity music, the majesty of a symphony does not reside in the stridency of the notes, but in the unbearable tension of the silences between them. The empty space is the dark canvas upon which matter and sound acquire their weight. Without the vacuum, everything is a glob of incomprehensible static. In the dissecting table of your own character, the tactical intervention to cure horror vacui is called the collapse of excess or the centripetal force of emptying. You must become the architect of your own tactical desolation. You must apply a relentless centripetal force to expel from your orbit everything that is not strictly necessary, retracting your energy from objects, from distractions, and from noise, to force it to collapse in the silence of your own ribcage. How is this emptying executed in the trench of your daily routine? Visualize the scenario. You arrive at your home after a day of friction with the world. The biomassive habit, the diseased tissue of your old self, will whisper in your ear to turn on a screen, to put on background music, or to seek something to chew. The ego wants to flee from the encounter with its own shadow. It is in that exact millisecond where you will apply the guillotine of the collapse. You will turn off all electronic devices. You will refuse to ingest any food if it is not strictly the hour of physical nutrition. You will walk toward the most sober room. You will sit in a straight-backed chair. You will rest your hands on your knees. And you will execute the most terrifying maneuver for the modern human mind. You will do absolutely nothing. You will force the collapse of probability by retaining all your attention in the acoustic and visual vacuum of the place. You will feel the immediate resistance of your brain. The synapses, addicted to the cheap dopamine of constant stimulation, will begin to fire alarms. You will feel itching, anxiety, impatience. Your mind will bombard you with logical excuses. This is a waste of time. You should be cleaning. You should be planning. You will crush that rebellion with the weight of your will. You will tell your own mind, silence. I am in command here. We will stay in this vacuum until you learn to respect it. The centripetal force of emptying demands a material and social purge. It means applying the blade of elimination to your environment. Every object in your house that is not useful or does not have a severe aesthetic weight must be eliminated. Every social relationship that only serves to fill dead hours with gossip and superficial conversations must be cut. You must create physical and temporal space around you. You must create a void. By stripping your life of noise, of excess objects, and of the static of useless company, the initial pain of solitude will make itself present. You will feel the cold of the vacuum brushing against your skin. But this cold is not the temperature of death. It is the temperature of outer space, the cradle of stars. As you maintain the discipline of sitting in the vacuum, of traveling in silence in your vehicle, and of enduring the deafening weight of your own existence without makeup, the thermodynamic transmutation will occur. Having no external objects to leak your energy toward, your energy will have no choice but to rebound. It will rebound against the internal walls of your being. You will begin to recharge your batteries at a terrifying speed. The vacuum will cease to be a threat that suffocates you, to become the dark, infinite, and perfect womb where your authority is forged. You have cleared the slate. Now you are ready for gravity. When the quantum noise of accumulation has been annihilated and the centripetal force has taught you to endure silence without blinking, the architecture of your reality suffers a quantum inversion. You abandon the weakness of believing that nothingness is a state of lack. You become the master of particles. To this new state of spatial domain, this master implant of minimalist sovereignty, we shall call the singularity of the void, or the weight of the invisible. In quantum field theory, physicists discovered that the vacuum is not empty. Even at absolute zero, space boils with an energy known as zero-point energy. Virtual particles are born and die constantly in that apparent nothingness. The quantum vacuum is, mathematically speaking, the most dense, charged, and powerful entity in the entire universe. It is the matrix from which all matter springs. By reaching this singularity, you acquire this same property. You discover the gravity of absence. What does the monarch experience when operating from this state of dense isolation? The invulnerable power of charged immobility. Since you no longer need things, noise, or external validation to feel alive, you become an organism of colossal mass. You are the source. The biomass around you bases all its power on what it has. They exhibit their titles and properties as armor, but the monarch, stripped of all excess, radiates an authority that comes exclusively from his pure core. Observe the thermodynamic impact of this state in the battlefield of human relationships. You find yourself in a critical negotiation or in a conflict of interest with your lineage. The other party arrives armed with words, with demands, and with noisy arguments. They attempt to fill the space because they fear the vacuum. They speak incessantly to impose their will. They are desperate. You, operating from the singularity of the void, use absence as a weapon of mass destruction. When they finish speaking and anxiously await your reaction or your counteroffer, you do not respond. You apply the weight of the invisible. You lean back in your chair and let the silence flood the room. In the physics of human interactions, whoever cannot bear the silence always ends up yielding power. The adversaries, clashing against your vacuum, will begin to feel an unbearable discomfort. They will feel the atmospheric pressure crushing their chest. Your silence is not doubt, it is zero-point energy. It is a vacuum so dense, so structured, and so implacable that it will begin to suck the confidence of the other. Unable to tolerate the gravity of absence, your interlocutors will break the silence. They will begin to speak again. They will justify themselves. They will lower their demands. They will lose. They will end up capitulating and surrendering their weapons, not because you threatened them, but because you opened a black hole of silence in the center of the table, and they, terrified of falling into nothingness, gave up all their power to try to close it. This is the secret of the invincible strategists. True power is never fully revealed. Supreme power resides in what is not said, in what is not shown, and in the space left empty. When you get used to inhabiting the vacuum, you become immune to the extortion of loss. You become a closed system, opaque and lethal. No one can pull your strings anymore. Your descendants will not respect you for the gifts you give them or the money you accumulate. They will respect you and feel a sacred panic before your figure, because they will sense that you inhabit a dimension where the oxygen of the modern world is no longer necessary. You are an unshakable organism. They will see an organism that can sit in an empty chair looking at a bare wall and exude more authority, more peace, and more gravitational weight than a dictator surrounded by 100,000 soldiers. Do not soil the majesty of your final years becoming an accumulator of noises. Empty the stage. The extreme maturity demands that the stage be swept until only the raw stone remains. Destroy the idol of overstimulation, close the doors, turn off the lights of distraction, sit in the center of the hurricane and allow the entire universe to disintegrate around you. You are the only force that remains. You discover with a cold and perfect smile that, when everything disappears, the only unmovable force that remains floating in the immensity of nothingness is the brutal and indestructible density of your own presence. You have become the vacuum that contains everything. You have become the weight of the invisible. Chapter 9. The Eye of the Hurricane. Immobility in Chaos. If we lift our gaze from the subatomic level toward the macrophysics of the atmosphere and fluid dynamics, we will discover one of the most terrifying, majestic, and destructive phenomena that the universe is capable of engendering: the hurricane. A tropical cyclone is not simply wind and rain, it is a gigantic thermodynamic machine. It is born from instability, it feeds on the heat of the ocean and the pressure difference, building a spiral of unleashed violence that can span hundreds of kilometers in diameter. In the periphery of this meteorological beast, and especially in what scientists call the eye wall, the winds reach catastrophic speeds. Everything that is weak, everything that is not anchored to the bedrock of the earth, is torn out by the roots, shredded, and thrown into the abyss. In the spiritual anatomy of the human being and in the sociology of families, Category 5 storms form with relentless regularity. It is here where the ordinary biomass fails. Faced with these storms, the ordinary individual commits the most ruinous act of tactical stupidity of their existence. To this instinctive reaction, to this blind panic that pushes the individual to fight against the wind, we shall name the dispersion or the quantum noise of agitation. Observe the behavior of the majority. Observe them when a serious crisis hits their ecosystem. A legal conflict threatens their estate. A family betrayal tears the loyalties of their lineage. A sudden illness alters the order of the home. Or simply, a discussion loaded with hysteria breaks out at the dining table. The system enters thermodynamic chaos. What does the dispersed elder do, the man or woman who has not forged their sovereignty? They enter a state of agitation. They believe in their infinite ignorance of the laws of physics that to stop a storm they must generate their own storm. If they are shouted at, they shout louder, trying to overcome the volume of the wind. If the family runs terrified, they run after them. If the adversary attacks, they raise their fists, tense their muscles, sweat, cry, and throw punches at the air. The dispersed individual opposes frontal resistance to the fury of the elements. They try to put out a forest fire by blowing on the flames. This is the deadly illusion. It is the arrogant and suicidal belief that friction cures chaos, and that violent movement is synonymous with resolution. You have been taught that before danger, you must do something, agitate, and prove that you care through the hysteria of your actions. Physics repudiates this fallacy with absolute disgust. When you agitate and oppose frontal resistance to a chaotic system that possesses greater kinetic energy than you do not stop the system. You are absorbed by it. If you try to push the eye wall of a hurricane, the hurricane does not slow down. It simply takes the energy of your arms and adds it to its vortex. It lifts you into the air, turning you into one more piece of debris spinning at 200 kilometers per hour. The individual who fights against chaos becomes part of the chaos. By shouting and running desperate to fix others, their own conscious matter dissolves. They fragment. They lose their center. Their vital energy, which should be compressed in their core, is torn away by the winds of the periphery and scattered across dozens of kilometers of useless discussions, reproaches, and exhaustion. The clinical result is devastating biological wear. The heart fatigues, and the nervous system eventually collapses. At the end of the day, the individual discovers that the storm used their own energy to become more destructive. He who fights noise with noise ends up deaf. If you aspire to the cold majesty of the first cause, you must learn to cheat the laws of the storm. You must prepare to walk toward the blind point. In the science of meteorology, there is a structural miracle at the exact center of the most monstrous cyclonic storms. While at the outer wall the world is being shredded by apocalyptic forces, in the mathematical center of the vortex, the barometric pressure drops to its lowest level and the winds suddenly die. This circular sanctuary is called the eye of the hurricane. Inside, the air descends gently. The sky clears, and one can see the blue of the stratosphere or the icy glint of the stars. There is no rain, there is no fury. It is a chamber of absolute silence, surrounded by a rotating wall of annihilation. In your own psyche, the tactical intervention to survive the hysteria of your environment is called the collapse of resistance or the centripetal force of immobility. You must become the navigator who does not flee the storm, but penetrates it with the rudder locked toward the center of the low pressure. You must apply a relentless centripetal force to withdraw all your troops from the periphery of the conflict, renounce the friction of extremes, and place yourself exactly in the blind spot of the problem. The technique consists of the conscious and deliberate annihilation of the defense instinct. How is this advance toward the core executed in a real crisis? Visualize the catastrophe. Hysteria breaks out in your family or estate. Someone of your blood attacks you with an unfair accusation. The environment becomes the eye wall. Screams, threats, and tears spin around you at dizzying speed. The animal instinct will demand that you raise your fists and interrupt the other to prove your innocence. It is in that millisecond of maximum tension where you must let the blade of the collapse fall. You will not raise your arms. You will not defend yourself. You will not attack back. You will drop the shield. Instead of opposing resistance to the mass of wind, you will apply the fluidity of the inert. You will walk toward the center. This means that when the aggressor launches their most hurtful argument, you will not block it. You will let the word pass through you as if you were made of air. Do not say, "That's a lie." To deny is to create friction. To deny is to hit the wind. You will apply the centripetal force of assenting silence. You will look into the eyes of the other's hurricane, keep your breathing in the sub-bass cadence of the Leviathan, and say with a voice of lead, "That is your perception of the problem." Or simply bow your head a millimeter, recognizing acoustically that you have heard, but refusing to validate the emotional content of the attack. By not offering a wall against which the other's anger can crash, the other's anger becomes unbalanced. The aggressor expected an impact, they find a vacuum. To reach the eye of the hurricane, you must endure the journey through the vortex wall. This is the moment of greatest agony for your ego. The ego wants to be right. It writhes in pain at hearing a lie and not debunking it. You will feel your blood boil, demanding that you put the fool in their place. You will murder that impulse with the cruelty of a surgeon. You must understand that being right in the middle of a hurricane is the consolation prize of idiots who die crushed by debris. The monarch only cares about governing the atmospheric pressure of the room. You will advance towards central immobility. By executing this collapse of resistance, you strip yourself of all contact surface. You shrink thermodynamically. By not opining and not defending, you cease to be an obstacle for the storm. You pass through the most violent gusts of collective panic until, suddenly, physics yields its fruits. You take the last step toward the center. In that precise instant, the agitation disappears. You enter the perfect vacuum. The wind dies, the sky opens in the vault of your own mind, and you prepare the ground of your spiritual anatomy for the eruption of the supreme state of silent domination. When the energy leak of frontal resistance has been amputated and the centripetal force has dragged you away from the wall of hysteria to the blind spot of inertia, your reality suffers a monstrous transmutation. You abandon the state of debris tossed by the wind to become the entity that rules the geometry. To this new state of unalterable gravity, we shall call the singularity of immobility, or destructive stillness. In the center of the vortex, a metaphysical phenomenon occurs. You discover that you do not need to stop the storm to win the war. You only need the storm to destroy your enemies while you remain. What does the monarch experience when inhabiting this center of mass? The brutal and ruthless peace of invulnerability. Since you refuse to participate in the friction, you become the only stable force of the ecosystem. You are the anchoring point around which the disaster revolves. The storm, family chaos, business crisis, continues to spin around you with extreme violence, but you are no longer in it. You are the mathematical axis upon which it rests. Visualize the impact. The crisis is at its peak. Your adversaries are exhausting all their kinetic energy at the periphery. They scream and take irrational decisions driven by fear. They are being shredded by their own turbulence. And in the center of the room, sitting in your chair, operating from the singularity of immobility, is you. You do not lift a finger to stop them. You practice destructive stillness. You watch them spin. You watch them crash against the walls of their own bad decisions. Your immobility is an act of incalculable geometric violence because by refusing to offer a safety net, you condemn them to consume every last drop of their own oxygen. You use the storm to clean your empire. As time passes, physics dictates its inescapable sentence. The biomass cannot sustain high speed for long. Panic consumes excess calories. Little by little, those at the periphery run out of strength. Aggressiveness transforms into exhaustion. The storm begins to dissipate for lack of fuel. When the dust finally settles and the hurricane dies of starvation against the unshakable coast of your silence, the survivors look up. There, at the exact center of the devastation, intact, without a drop of sweat, with the rhythmic breath of the Leviathan, is you. You are the mass. The sacred terror that this image infuses is the absolute guarantee of your lifelong authority. Your descendants will understand that you are an anomaly of physics. They will discover that trying to attack you is like trying to hit the center of the vacuum. The blow never lands, but the effort exhausts. Demonstrating that destructive stillness is your main weapon ensures no one will dare to summon a hurricane in your presence again. They will know you will not descend to the arena to get muddy with them. You will simply sit in the eye of the storm and watch them bleed until they ask for mercy. This is the summit of energy efficiency. You have stopped trying to fix a world designed to break. You have abandoned the savior complex that prematurely ages weak patriarchs. By accepting that chaos is the natural state of the external universe, you have shielded your internal universe. Do not soil the nobility of your final years becoming a worker of others' drama. You are not the mason who rebuilds the straw houses of idiots after every gust of wind. You are the architect of gravity. Walk in silence toward the center of the low pressure. Sit on your throne and enjoy the cold peace. Chapter 10. The Absolute Singularity, Infinite Gravity. Throughout this implacable descent into the depths of spiritual mechanics and the physics of power, you have amputated your weaknesses one by one. You have decapitated haste, sealed the leaks of temporal anxiety, shielded your core against the noise of society, and learned to inhabit the void without your pulse trembling. You have stripped away the rusted armor of the victim to clothe yourself in the titanium of conscious matter. However, at the very threshold of definitive victory, at the exact frontier where the ordinary man dies and the first cause is born, lurks the most subtle, poisonous, and lethal trap of all human cosmology. The ego's last gasp. We shall call this final trap, this desperate attempt of identity to survive disguised as enlightenment, the dispersion or the quantum noise of wisdom. To understand the magnitude of this danger, we must observe the life cycle of stars. When a star exhausts its fuel, before collapsing, it experiences a phase of monstrous expansion. It becomes a red giant. It swells disproportionately, swallowing nearby planets and emitting a blinding light. But this expansion is a thermodynamic deception. The star is immense in size, but it has lost its density. Its core is cooling. It is a dying sphere of thin gas trying to occupy maximum space before its end. In the anatomy of human development, this red giant is the spiritual ego, Observe those individuals who, after overcoming crises or reaching peace in old age, suffer this expansion. Suddenly, they feel a feverish, addictive need to prove to the world how much they have evolved. They become preachers of their own tranquility. They want to give unsolicited advice to their children and friends. They post philosophical phrases and talk incessantly about how detached they are. This is the deadly illusion at its peak, believing that wisdom needs an audience to be real. The individual infected by the noise of wisdom fails to see the trap. By trying to enlighten others, by trying to convince the biomass that he no longer belongs to it, he is committing the same thermodynamic energy leak as when he was anxious about the future. He is emitting radiation outward. He is seeking validation. The elder who needs recognition is still a slave to toxic entanglement. The physical universe despises boasting. Constant radiation weakens the source. If you spend your last reserves of vital energy trying to open the eyes of fools, you will end up exhausted. Your red giant will dissipate into the dark void, leaving behind a nebula of empty words that no one will remember. You did not endure the dissecting table to become a neighborhood guru, begging for applause for your unmovable stance. True presence does not announce itself with trumpets. True presence collapses space-time in the most absolute and terrifying of silences. You must annihilate the figure of the internal teacher. To cross the final threshold, you must renounce the vanity of leaving a verbal legacy. If you long to reach the absolute crown of the vortex, you must prepare for the most violent event in astrophysics, the total implosion of identity. Let the red giant collapse to give birth to the ultimate monster of cosmology. The collapso, the centripetal force. In the abyss of the cosmos, when a supermassive star exhausts its radiant energy, the force of gravity pulling toward its center no longer finds resistance. In a fraction of a second, the entire star implodes. The outer layers are expelled in a supernova, but the core is crushed with infinite force. Electrons are pushed against protons, the empty space within the atom is annihilated, and matter is compressed until it breaks the laws of three-dimensional physics. The core retracts beyond the event horizon, disappearing from the universe's sight. In your final surgery, this is the implosion of the self. We call this the centripetal force of the black hole. You must become the architect of your own tactical disappearance. Apply a centripetal force so monstrous and ruthless that it tears from your mind any residual need to be seen or admired. The technique consists of absolute retraction from emission toward pure absorption. How is this cosmological event executed on a Tuesday afternoon? Visualize the scenario. You are in a meeting. Someone makes a tactical error or exposes an ignorant philosophy. You see the solution with mathematical clarity. The diseased tissue, the trace of the red giant, will inject the impulse to speak. It will order you to open your mouth to correct the fool and prove your moral superiority. It is in that final millisecond where you must invoke the gravity of implosion. You will not speak. You will not correct. You will look at the ignorance of the other and apply total retraction. Do not emit a single photon. Implosion of the self means killing the teacher and the savior. It means adopting the tactical policy of invisibility. From this collapse, you will stop explaining your decisions. When you act, you will offer no justification. If you decide to sell, you sell. If you decide to be silent, you are silent. If someone asks the reason for your coldness, do not give them a map of your soul. Return a flat gaze, devoid of interest, and let them sink into their own assumptions. This collapse demands a discipline bordering on self-sadism. It is accepting that humanity will die without ever understanding your achievement. It is accepting that they may consider you a stubborn, mute, or eccentric old man instead of the quantum emperor you are. But by swallowing your own light and refusing to seek validation, you experience definitive thermodynamic liberation. The energy you spent on seeming wise is inverted violently inward. Finding no exit, the energy accumulates at your geometric center. Layers of ego, bourgeois pride, and intellectual vanity are crushed by the pressure. You become smaller on the social surface, less noisy, and less visible, but your core becomes infinitely denser. You have crossed the event horizon. There is no longer light escaping your body. The universe has stopped seeing your movements, but it is about to feel the thermodynamic terror of your attraction. You have become a singularity, a point of infinite weight that no longer needs to be seen to exist or to govern the space around it. The singularity, the pure presence, when the quantum noise of wisdom has been suffocated and the centripetal force has crushed all need for external validation, you experience the birth of the most terrifying and perfect physical entity. You transmute into the supreme anomaly. We call this the perfect vortex, or the absolute singularity of infinite gravity. In modern cosmology, a black hole makes no effort to dominate its galaxy. It emits no orders. It does not send rays of light to convince planets to orbit it. The black hole simply exists in a state of infinitely dense stillness. Its gravity is so colossal that the fabric of space-time bows around it. All matter, light and stars are forced to spin in an infinite vortex, paying tribute to a central darkness that asks for nothing, but rules everything. Upon reaching absolute singularity, your spiritual anatomy assumes this same geometry. You have become the perfect vortex. You are the final authority. What does the monarch experience when crowning existence with infinite gravity? The passive power of the ecosystem's thermodynamic submission. Since you have stopped emitting energy to control or help others, your life's polarity inverts. It is no longer you seeking the world, it is the world falling toward you. Observe this in your lineage or company. You do not call to demand attention. You do not summon meetings to impose respect. You simply sit in your chair and breathe. But because your quantum density is now absolute, because you have absorbed the void and mastered geological slowness, your presence curves the air. The biomass, scared and empty of mass, will feel the gravitational fall. Instinctively, your children, partners, and adversaries will begin to orbit around you. They will seek your counsel, but you will give it in droplets, knowing that scarcity multiplies the value of the verb. You keep them in the necessary tension. They will try to bring you their hurricanes, but upon hitting your event horizon, their problems will be disintegrated and absorbed without a sound. You will govern through the crushing weight of tactical immobility. The fear of biological death evaporates because you have already imploded your ego. The death of the body is only the degradation of the outermost shell, but the singularity you have forged, that cold conscious matter, does not belong to biology. It belongs to the eternal laws of thermodynamics. Even after your heart stops, the gravitational impact of your vortex will alter your lineage's trajectory. Your descendants will remember the silence with which you faced pain. They will remember the icy gaze that disarmed manipulators. That memory, encoded in the bone marrow of the following generations, will act as an invisible quantum anchor. It will prevent them from flying off into the chaos of the world. You have been the surgeon and the executioner of your own weakness. You entered the table as a pile of scared atoms, crying for old age. You have endured the pain of amputating toxic empathy and slowed the clock of relativity. You have collapsed all probabilities until leaving only the indestructible truth of your core. The quantum journey has ended. Theory has become flesh. You are now the unmovable center of the tempest, the star that swallowed itself to learn to dominate the darkness. Do not ask for permission to occupy your space. Recline on the throne of your own density and breathe the oxygen of the immortals. Watch with terrifying and perfect peace as the chaos of humanity, with all its useless fury and passing dramas, spins helplessly, submissively, and eternally chained to the infinite immensity of your own gravity. You are the singularity. You are the end of time. You are the monarch of the absolute. Conclusion: the absorption of the universe. The experiment has concluded. You have crossed the minefield of your own thermodynamic weakness and survived the disintegration of your most deep-seated illusions. As you close the pages of this treatise, the dispersed, frightened, and reactive individual who began reading no longer exists. He has been crushed by the laws of physics. He has been triturated by the unshakable laws of quantum mechanics and the astrophysics of the spirit. What remains now, anchored in the exact coordinate of this millisecond, is not an elder passively waiting for the end of his days, but a physical phenomenon of incalculable magnitude. You have ceased to be a random consequence. You have transmuted into the central and absolute cause of your own reality. For decades, society programmed you to evaporate. It taught you that living consisted of constantly emitting energy, speaking without ceasing to be heard, racing against the clock for non-existent futures, and suffering for others to prove empathy. They turned you into a dying star, a red giant wasting valuable nuclear fuel, heating the vacuum of people and situations that never returned the heat. You have lived torn apart, suffering quantum entanglement with the world's misery. But by crossing the event horizon and forging your singularity, you have inverted your existence. You have understood the maximum law of geometric domination. True authority never expands toward the periphery, it contracts toward the core. The monarch does not pursue, he attracts. The emperor does not demand silence, he imposes it through his own vacuum. You have turned off the transmitters of complaint and doubt forever. By silencing the useless emission of your energy, you have activated the most destructive and perfect power of the cosmos, absorption. Just as the black hole devours light and matter that dares to cross its border, you now absorb the world's chaos without it altering the icy temperature of your quantum core by a single degree. Observe the universe from this new, unmovable immensity. The human ecosystem, your family, your adversaries, the collective hysteria of the news, will continue its frenetic dance. They will generate hurricanes of neurosis, financial crises, and abstract fears. But you are no longer in the periphery, receiving the blows of the wind. You have applied the definitive centripetal force and sat in the eye of the hurricane. When the biomass tries to throw its daily tragedies at you, expecting you to react or be scared, they will crash head-on against the invisible wall of your critical mass. Your dense silence will absorb their screams. Your mass is total. Your tactical immobility will disintegrate their haste. Your gaze, operating from the observer effect, will annihilate their manipulations. They will see with reverential terror how their problems enter the gravitational field of your presence and disappear into nothingness, suffocated by the immensity of your destructive stillness. By absorbing the universe, you do not become contaminated, you purify it through the annihilation of drama. Those around you will have no choice but to surrender to thermodynamic physics. They will orbit around you, lowering their voices and measuring their words, forced to respect the only organism that refuses to tremble. The absorption of the universe includes the mathematical conquest of your two greatest terrors, time and death. By applying the dilation of the instant, you have absorbed the clock. There is no longer any haste, because every second you breathe contains such tactile and conscious density that it becomes geological. As for death, the great final entropy, you no longer flee from it. How could a vortex fear the darkness if he himself was forged in the deepest night of space? When biology dictates that your flesh container has completed its cycle of wear, you will not emit the shriek of the terrified prey. You are the predator. You will absorb death itself. You will receive it in your center of gravity with the divine arrogance of one who knows that the physical body may dissolve. But the density of character, the code of blood, and the dignity of stone will remain printed as an indestructible anomaly in the fabric of space-time of your lineage. You have awakened. You are, at last, conscious matter. You are the crushing weight of the invisible. Close the doors to distraction. Anchor your feet in the earth with the violence of a meteorite. Turn off forever the childish need to be understood or loved by inferior minds. Sit on the throne of your own quantum void. Breathe with the heavy cadence of the Leviathans and enjoy the deafening silence of your empire. The external universe is only an ocean of white noise. You are the supreme gravity that silences it. Absorb it all. Do not let a single atom of your peace escape. Govern the chaos simply by existing in your center. Let the entire world collapse, surrender, and disintegrate before the majestic, infinite, and absolutely lethal perfection of your pure presence. The operation is over. The universe is yours. You are the black hole that holds the galaxy together. You are the stillness. You are the end. You are the sovereign. You are